Aloha world! Patricia O'Connor and Frida Reba Darcy here today on the Bonsai balcony. We're going to do a little update. We're going to do a little update on where we are and what's going on with our balcony and with our show and with our cameras and with our trees and with the weather and yada, yada, yada. For starters, I'm Patricia O'Connor. My partner in crime, as always, is Frida Reba Darcy. And we are the Bonsai Balcony, and this is our humble abode, and also where I shoot bonsai videos. So on this balcony, we're looking at some bald cypress. They are in one stage of changing colors for the winter. We can see a little drop of foliage down there, but it's still, these guys are still photosynthesizing. Our temperatures today in Alameda, California, which is in the Bay Area, we're right next to San Francisco. Our temperatures here, they say, are in the 60s. Frankly, I think it's quite a bit warmer than that. It's probably mid 70s or so, but that's still nothing to cry about. But here recently, in October, we had some really hard heat. And when it's really high heat on the ground, it's a little higher up here, four floors up on my balcony. So when that happens, we make sure everybody's hydrated. We try to time our watering so that they will not have been overwatered before going into a heat spell like this, so that we can pour it to them on those days, as both to keep them hydrated and also to cool down the pots and maybe chill the roots a bit. But with that, we have our losses. And so far this year, over the last heat spell, I have lost a few trees. That one still got a little green left to go, but I'm not expecting good things. Ooh, sorry. I'm just knocking camera into stuff here. And this guy, I'm sad. But I can't change the weather. This little pondo is had an adjustment in color. You can see it's a little lighter in color. I don't think we lost it though. I think it's okay. Most of our established trees can roll with stuff like that, because on our end, we do tend to keep our trees watered. If water in the tree will help it to survive its heat spell, then, and that's what we see. That's what I see with my more established trees, that some of the young guys have so much less resources going in that it bops them. And especially, like I've said before, I think it makes it worse when you get high heat like this, and it's late in the game when trees have, on an evolutionary scale, they would have been trying to work their way more towards a wintertime temp. Also, I'm looking at my ponderosa, and it looks like it got maybe a little sucked as well. Overall, it's very green, and it is still pushing out growth, which I've said before. I don't know how much I am crazy about. On one hand, look at all that new growth. It's just pushing out all over the place. On the other hand, that's kind of how they do themselves in when they're pushing out new growth, and they should be dormant. That is how these trees can succumb to all of that. I think I'm showing you one of our graphs that even has a bud coming off to the side of it. Hopefully I'm showing you that. Anyway, try to get it right there at the base of that graft. There's a bud coming out to the side, so that thing is already, as it's coming out, it's already vipricating off. And that bud would that little black pine bud would better appreciate this weather than the rest of this foliage. So we're anxious to see if that keeps going. We're anxious to get that going so that the tree isn't trying to overcome a so-so climate when we have enough Japanese black pine foliage on that tree to where it has some dominance in the way that the tree is growing and surviving. Then this weather will be perfect for it, as it is for my other little black pine. When it's not 90 degrees, but again, that would be a larger tree, so I think that would be probably a little less of an issue. This is a look back the other way. We can see some heat damage on some of these guys, but overall, the ponderosas can take high heat, but it's November, so that's probably. This is a quick look at this little oak. Man, we did a little prune back here just a couple of weeks ago, and all of our prune backs have already resulted in new, nice, cool foliage that's just extending right on out. Loving that. Just keep on going. There's a little look in our little hollow tree feature in there. Yeah, just a lot to be excited about. Okay, now here's a quick look at the end result when I pruned the Chinese wisteria that had woolly aphids, looked more like woolly mammoths all over the thing, but they were a herd of woolly aphids. So Pat went in there and took them out. I took them out two ways. I took them out with a cocktail mix of neem and dish soap, and then after that, I went back and plucked them all off, and just plucked them all off. There you go, babe. That's a little something for you. Now, a quick look, and here's some thoughts on my oak. Looking at more people's, looking at other oaks, other cork bark oak bonsais. I'm thinking maybe I made a slight error on here, perhaps. I've been cutting everything back way close and letting that vibricate off, and then cutting that back off way close, and figuring that eventually we'll grow it out to here. Now, the reason I've been doing that is when you let new growth on this tree go, you get one little bud, and then you get the next node, and then this is the third node. You see the distance there? Now look at the distance between here and here, right? There's a lot of nothing in between there. And that's what these guys do. They start making those really long strides in between the nodes. So I always felt like that wasn't the most desirable parts of the tree. But whenever I'm looking at other people's trees, I also see them with their main structure is probably maybe farther out than what I've been allowing all of this stuff to get. So maybe I'll let some of these guys run out a little and see how they like that before I chop them back super hard. Maybe I'll just do that and see what that gets us. But you see that even our little prune back that we did here very recently, and that's already yielding all of those new nice elongated shoots out there. Our dawn redwood, like our bald cypress, is slowly doing its shift of colors, and I am going to let that tree die back when everything turns. When everything turns to this, it's super simple to defoliate then, and I'll just wait until that time is ready. So yeah. Now looking at our literati pine, we wired this last year, and I think last year, and I kind of saw where that was getting ready to start really biting in. So we released it here a few months back. That might have been a Saturday Night Live bonsai show. But our top looks pretty good, although it looks like we could use some bio gold in there. but I need to go back through. I need to go back through and rewire these branches. They're starting. Some of them are starting to get a little shaggy, starting to hang down a little too much. And yeah, I just need to work on their direction a little bit. Would be a good time to go back and do that. Also, this thing has an enormous amount of escape roots out the bottom. You can even see some of them over here where once I moved it, I exposed them. So there's a lot of escape roots down there. It's hard for the pot to even set level, but like I said, this is one of my more established trees. Were able to handle the heat better than some of my baby trees. So in the end, part of the reason for that is because the larger trees have more pot volume, have more soil, have more substance down here to try to have cool places or damp places or stash places or what have you. That just helps them. The bigger pots would. Trees that are in that don't think they succumb as fast in cold, and I don't think they succumb as fast in heat. So, but this little literati is a little underpotted, right? It's a little underpotted. So that would kind of work against it. What works in its favor are all those escape roots. All those escape roots that it put out that are in here in this wet substrate where this stays wet several hours longer than the pots do. So when these guys go dry, they've got their escape roots in that, and I don't think it would be a good idea to cut that away until I know that I'm out of that heat cycle. When we get a little further, a little closer to winter, and I know, today I'm not at all sure that we're not going to get up to the mid 70s or possibly closer to 80 or something. And whereas what I was saying about that tiny pot, not that tiny pot, but that small pot working against its reserves, those escape roots counteract that somewhat. So probably something to think about, getting rid of those here pretty quickly, but not to get too feisty about it. It may need those as long as we could still have the kind of temps. So that's what's going on. That's what's going on there. We've seen some heat issues. We've seen some heat losses. We lost Simply P. I noticed the change of color. When I noticed the change of color in some of the smaller trees that I lost, it Simply P had more reserve in the way of reserve. So it took it longer for that color to go and go and go, and finally it never responded to anything. I tried to take it out of direct heat or out of the wind, and nothing that I could do on my end changed the rate of depletion on that tree. So we lost Simply P out of that. We've had that tree for a few years. I actually had very high hopes for what Simply P would become too, but we got a lot out of that. I learned a lot from that tree, and we could do a best of the guys we lost this year. But loss is sometimes, unfortunately, a part of it, and loss in itself is not something that tends to make me want to quit. Typically look at it as a learning experience. And I can even remember when loss would equal crashing a motorcycle. I never, like racing and stuff, I used to partake in motorsports. So even then, if something happened and I had no idea what, that was always the most troubling to me, more so than busting my butt or getting hurt or ending up having to see doctors or something, or seeing wreckage all the way down a track when I do this for fun. At the end, the thing that I would find, the only things that I found most unnerving was when I didn't know what happened. So that's kind of it, is knowing knowing what's happening and knowing what's going on around you goes a long way towards your resolve, I would say. We have a beautiful balcony here, I think, and not because of my abundant decorating skills, but I would say, well, because bonsai is a pretty beautiful undertaking, and they tend to add beauty to the space they occupy. So yeah, those cypress trees, look at those buttresses and look at these colors. We're slowly but surely working the green out of these guys. We get to make some branch selection here in a little while. And what that means is I'll be taking these guys that vipricated off this year and chopping them back to unequal lengths. On some of these branches, I'll be making ones into twos. On some of these branches, we'll be making twos into fours, and so forth. So I look forward to that, but then after that, the trees look depleted and a little skeletal. Not like maybe a maple that has all of that beautiful ramification, that's just kind of fascinating to look at. These guys are kind of long and lanky. They might be a little long and lanky. I think they have their best foot forward when they're in full grain, but getting a good shape to them is also good. I could probably, just looking at it, I would like to see this then come out. But I got to remember that I'm cutting all of this stuff back every year so that we can continue to ramify. I really enjoyed growing these bald cypress. I've probably had this growing now for 3, 4, I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. But a couple of the leaders on the center one have been chopped back more than once until I finally got a shoot coming out on either side of my little twin towers there that was in the right place to make a good straight leader. All of the ones that I had growing off of these two parts of the tree before were like 2 years ago, the leader was kind of out here where my finger is. And I was hoping that this would eventually catch up, and I thought, no, that's just going to keep growing further out. So I cut all of that out. When this little sprout grew from the base of it, I went, if that lives, if this little sprout starts to become a limb, I'm going to start cutting that old leader back. And when I get down to this lump, I'm going to cut all of that back. And I'm going to let this guy go. And that was last year, and it's already got quite a bit of size to it. That's the new sheriff in town. The one in back is a couple of years older, but they are both taking off and starting to get some substance to them. This is just going to become a more and more convincing little show from now on. And up until now, it still has struck me as a really beautiful composition. Even as pre-bonsai, I've said numerous times that I have really enjoyed growing these 3 trees. At some point, the pot that it's in, that's a mica pot, so that's not an unglazed pot, that's a mica pot. And it holds an awful lot of substrate, so we can build an awful lot of, frankly, probably big clunky roots, because we have to build big clunky tree parts. Fine roots make fine ramification, so that's what you would want on trees, where you want all that fine ramification. And big thick roots grow lumber, which is what all of these trunk chopped trees are doing. They're building large pieces of lumber. They're turning those sticks that you can see in the shadows through the foliage into the same diameter as those trunks. And you can kind of see the funnel effect going with those guys now, except it needs to even out a lot more at the base of those leaders, or the parts coming out of the top. It's been very, very satisfying to do this. Also, if you can take a single bald cypress tree and put it in your bonsai pot, for instance, and say you wanted to go somewhere on vacation or got called away for, you know, a week or so, you could put that bonsai pot in a pie tin that had water in it. I'm not talking about submerging it over the top of the substrate, but you could set your bonsai pot in, you know, some water this deep if your pot's, you know, whatever, and just blow down. As long as there was water in there, it would still be getting watered. These guys are high heat tolerant. They do not like to dry out. They do not like to dry out. The foliage on these trees, for the type of, they are very, very similar in a lot of ways to redwoods, but you'll find the foliage on a swamp cypress or a bald cypress, Taxodium ditchum, you'll find it to be really light, really, really light. And I would say by comparison, coastal redwoods and dawn redwoods, that foliage is a little thicker. And yeah, well, for instance, on the coastal redwood, those are evergreens. And it looks very similar, but it's thicker. And you can see why that would last a year over something that loses all of its fronds in the winter. So that's what's kind of got us there. I'm having thoughts about how long I'm leaving the branches on the cork bark oak log. I'd like some feedback, but I think even showing you here, you can see those branches that just came out, how long they are. That might be a pretty good length for those. And I think going through here, you know what? Let's just do it. Finish the thought, Pat. I'm gonna go through there and say that I wanna see these come out at this length. I would like to see these. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna cut our tips. We think we're gonna cut our tips, yeah. One down. Yeah, and we're gonna go through here and cut the tips off. So what that means is I would like for it to stop all that elongation, and I would like for that to branch off there. There. So yeah, like and subscribe if you guys have not already. Our next drop will be in a few days. I started working Saturdays. I am going to see if I can amend that, because that cost me being able to do a show on Saturday, and that cost me Saturday night live bonsai, because I don't get in time. I don't get in time to roll that over. Like and subscribe if you guys have not already. Our next drop will probably be our midweek drop. I appreciate you. Reba Darcy appreciates you. And thank you so much for watching. Cue the dog. Cue the dog. Who's a good boy?